Ladies and gentlemen, Governor Mitt Romney. Panie i panowie, gubernator Mitt Romney.
Very warm welcome to this great city. It's been a privilege for me to meet with President Komorowski, Prime Minister Tusk, Foreign Minister Sikorsky, and former President Walesa. It's an honor to be in this place also. This is a nation with an extraordinary heritage that's crafting a remarkable future. At a time of widespread economic slowdown and stagnation, your economy last year outperformed all the other nations of Europe. Quite an accomplishment. I began this trip in Great Britain and ended it here in Poland, the two bookends of NATO, history's greatest military alliance that has kept the peace for over half a century. While I was at 10 Downing Street, I thought back to the days of Winston Churchill, the man who first spoke of the Iron Curtain that had descended across Europe. What an honor to stand in Poland among the men and women who helped lift that curtain. After that stay in England, I visited the state of Israel, a friend of your country and mine. It's been a trip to 3 places far apart on the map. But for an American, you can't get much closer to the ideals and convictions of my own country than you can to these places. Our nations belong to the great fellowship of democracies. We speak the same language of freedom and justice. We uphold the right of every person to live at peace. I believe it's critical to stand by those who have stood by America. Solidarity was a great movement that freed a nation. And it's with solidarity that America and Poland face the future. Yesterday I saw the memorial at Westerplatte and the gate at the Gdansk shipyard. In both places, Polish citizens stood with courage and determination against daunting odds. And today, on the eve of the 68th anniversary of this city's uprising against the Nazis, I will pay tribute at the monument to that historic struggle. Over 200,000 Poles were killed in those weeks, and this city was nearly destroyed. But your enduring spirit, that survived. Free men and women everywhere, whether they've been here or not, already know this about Poland. In some desperate hours of the last century, your people were the witnesses to hope, led onward by strength of heart and faith in God, not only by force of arms, but by the power of truth in villages and parishes across the land. You shamed the oppressor and gave light to the darkness. Time and again, history has recorded the ascent of liberty, propelled by souls that yearn for freedom and justice. Former Secretary of State in the United States, Condoleezza Rice, has noted that it's often one brave man or woman who says no to oppression, and in doing so sparks a revolution of courage in hundreds, thousands, or millions of others. In 1955, in my country, Rosa Parks said no to a bus driver who told her to give up her seat to a white person. And in doing so, she started a revolution of dignity and equality that continues to this day. Mohammed Bouazizi, a street vendor in Tunisia, was denied his business wares by a government functionary, and in protest committed suicide by self-immolation. With that act of defiance, the Arab Spring was born. Nicolae Ceausescu stood before an audience of 200,000, recounting for them his supposed works on their behalf. One elderly woman shouted out what others only thought. "Liar," she said. Others echoed her, first hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands. And with the fall of Ceausescu days later, the entire nation had awakened, and the people were free. And here in Poland, in 1979, a son of Poland, Pope John Paul II, spoke words that would bring down an empire and bring freedom to millions who lived in bondage. "Be not afraid." Those words changed the world. I and my fellow Americans are inspired by the path of freedom tread by the people of Poland. Long before modern times, of course, the Polish and American people were hardly strangers. The name Pulaski is honored this day in America, and so is the memory of other Poles who joined in our fight for our nation's independence. 2 years after our young republic gave the New World its first freely adopted written constitution, Poland did the same for the Old World, with a preamble that called liberty dearer than life. At every turn in our history, through wars and crises, through every change in the geopolitical map, we have met as friends and allies. That was true in America's Revolutionary War, it was true in the dark days of the Second World War, and it has been true in Iraq and Afghanistan. There's never been a moment when our peoples felt anything but mutual respect and goodwill, and that's not common in history. Americans watched with astonishment and admiration as an electrician led a peaceful protest against a brutal and oppressive regime. It has to be understood, President Walesa has recently said, that the Solidarity Movement philosophy was very simple. When you can't lift a weight, you ask someone else for help and to lift it with you. Of course, among the millions of Poles who said yes, there was one who has a unique and special place in our hearts, Pope John Paul II. When he first appeared on the balcony above St. Peter's Square, a correspondent on the scene wrote to his editor with a first impression. "This is not just a pope from Poland," he said. "This is a pope from Galilee." In 1979, Pope John Paul II celebrated Mass with you in a square not far from here. He reminded the world that there would be no justice in Europe without an independent Poland. And he reminded the Polish people, long deprived of that independence, from where they drew their source of strength. While he was greeting a crowd along a fence, he met a little girl. He paused and asked her, "Where is Poland?" The little girl, caught off guard, couldn't answer him. She laughed nervously until the great Pope put his hand over her heart and said, "Poland is here." John Paul II understood that a nation is not a flag or a plot of land. It is a people, a community of values, and the highest value Poland honors to the world's great fortune is man's innate desire to be free. Unfortunately, there are parts of the world today where the desire to be free is met with brutal oppression. Just to the east of here, the people of Belarus suffer under the oppressive weight of dictatorship. The Arab world is undergoing an historic upheaval, one that holds promise, but also risk and uncertainty. Syria has killed thousands. Its brutal dictator responsible for the lives of thousands of his own people. In Latin America, Hugo Chavez leads a movement characterized by authoritarianism and repression. Nations in Africa are fighting now to resist the threat of radical violent jihadism. And in Russia, once promising advances toward a free and open society have faltered. In a turbulent world, Poland stands as an example and a defender of freedom. Only last month in Gdansk, a sculpture was unveiled of President Ronald Reagan and John Paul II. As President Walesa told a reporter, Reagan should have a monument in every city. Krzeslaw Nowak, recalled the days in 1981 when he, Walesa, and others were imprisoned by the communist regime. Just when it felt like they might be forgotten by the world, the captives learned that in the White House, the President of the United States was lighting candles. It was a demonstration of unity. Unity with them, a sign of solidarity. When Reagan lit the candles, Mr. Nowak recalled, we knew we had a friend in the United States. This is a country that made a prisoner a president, that went from foreign domination to the proud and independent nation you are today. And now for both our nations, the challenge is to be worthy of this legacy as we find our way forward. The false gods of the all-powerful state claim the allegiance of the lonely few. It is for us, in this generation and beyond, to show all the world what free people and free economies can achieve for the good of all. Perhaps because here in Poland, centralized control is no distant memory, you brought a special determination to securing a free and prosperous economy. When the Soviet Empire breathed its last, Poland's economy was in a state of crisis. When economists analyzed it from abroad, one heard talk of the prospect of starvation in major cities. But from the depths of those dark times, this nation's steady rise is a shining example of the prosperity that economic opportunity can bring. Your nation has moved from a state monopoly over the economy, with price controls and severe trade restrictions, to a culture of entrepreneurship, greater fiscal responsibility, and international trade. And as a result, your economy has experienced positive growth in each of the last 20 years. In that time, you have doubled the size of your economy. The private sector has gone from a mere 15% of the economy to 65% today. And while other nations fell into recession in recent years, you've weathered the storm and continued to grow and flourish. When economists speak of Poland today, it's not to lament chronic problems, but to describe how this nation empowered the individual, lifted the heavy hand of government, and became the fastest growing economy in all of Europe. Yesterday, one of your leaders shared with me an economic truth that's been lost in much of the world. He said this: it is simple. You don't borrow what you can't pay back. The world should pay close attention to the transformation of Poland's economy. A march toward economic liberty and smaller government has meant a march toward higher living standards, a strong military that defends liberty at home and abroad, and an important and growing role on the international stage. Rather than heeding the false promise of a government-dominated economy, Poland sought to stimulate innovation, attract investment, expand trade, and live within its means. Your success today is a reminder that the principles of free enterprise can propel an economy and transform a society. It's such a time of difficulty and doubt throughout Europe. Poland's economic transformation over these past 20 years is a fitting turn in the story of your country. In the 1980s, when other nations doubted that political tyranny could ever be faced down or overcome, the answer was, look to Poland. And today, as some wonder about the way forward out of economic recession and fiscal crisis, the answer once again is, look to Poland. It's not surprising that a people who waited so long and endured so much for the sake of liberty are today enjoying liberty to the fullest. Poland has no greater friend and ally than the people of the United States of America. You helped us win our independence. Your bravery inspired the Allies in the Second World War. You helped bring down the Iron Curtain, and your soldiers fought side by side with ours in Iraq and Afghanistan. We have fought together. We have died together. We share a common cause, tested by time, inseparable by foe. In times of trouble, and in times of peace, we march together. God bless you, God bless America, and God bless the great nation of Poland. Thank you so much.